Hello, my name is Justin Larstra. I am doing my presentation on John C. Borrero. So we'll start with a brief intro. He is currently an associate professor at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. He is still an active researcher. All of my articles are actually from the past 10 or so years. He has a PhD that he got from the University of Florida, and his focus is mainly in early childhood intervention. Some of the work that I found a couple of articles on DRL, or the differential reinforcement of low rates of behaviors. The one that I'm put on the presentation is talked about the effectiveness on severe problem behaviors. It found that it looked at building off of like previous research where it was proven that DRL is a good reinforcement schedule for behaviors from kids that are kind of mildly intrusive within school settings. And so they wanted to look at, say, severe, so self-injurious behaviors and whatnot within a school setting. And it found that I believe most of the subjects within the study actually had pretty drastic drops in the rates of their behaviors. The next one that I saw was comparing accumulated response reinforcer schedules with distributed response reinforcer schedules. So this is essentially like a token board. With my visual there, they were given an option or had two different kind of reinforcement schedules where they had each subject work for certain amounts of time with their reinforcements. So say you do a couple of demands, you get about 30 seconds of your laptop or your iPad. And that would be the distributed response reinforcer schedule. The next one is the accumulated response reinforcement schedule, where you do all of your work in a row, and then you get a larger sum of time at the very end of all your work. So you fill out the full token board, and then you get a large chunk of laptop or iPad time. This study showed that actually all the kids had high acquisition rates with the cumulative response reinforcer schedules, and that they all preferred the accumulated response reinforcer schedule. And then the last topic that I noticed on some of his studies were looking at the picture exchange communication system and requesting for items when they are not present. This study looked at a possible deficit in the ability to teach kids with disabilities how to request for items when they are not present or in their sight. They noticed that of the two people that they looked at in this study, that one of the kids was actually having difficulties requesting for items using their PEC system when the item is not present, showing a possible inconsistency in being able to teach that skill for kids with a communication deficit. So next is my interview questions. I made most of these to kind of build off of the studies that I looked at. My first one would be for that last study that I looked at, which is the PEC system. And I would be asking if there was any plans for follow-up of that PEC system research, just due to the fact that I find it a very interesting topic. I currently work with a couple of kids who actually use augmentative devices, so not quite a PEC system, but still in kind of the means of not having conventional communication. And I thought that study had like a possibility to show a deficit in there, but the sample size was extremely small. So there was no actual way to prove that if that was just that one kid who just had a deficit in actually requesting for things when they're not present, or if it was the PEC system itself causing that. My next one would be my asking his thoughts about how efficient the accumulated reinforcement schedules would be for younger populations. I didn't go into this in the previous slide, but out of all of the subjects within that study, most of them were actually about teenager age. And I currently work with kids that are at age range from about 3 to 8. So I would actually want to know how these results would work for kids in younger populations. Since only one subject really was, or within that study was actually within the age range of kids that I work with, I liked the results or what it was looking at. I just don't know if it would necessarily pertain to the age range and population that I currently work with. Next, I would just be wondering, since he's done a couple of research studies on it, I would just want to know if he thinks that DRL schedules would be the most efficient method in lowering both mild and severe problem behaviors. I know that one of the main benefits in differential reinforcement of low rates of behaviors is the fact that it's a little easier to maintain in a school setting because of the fact that you can kind of keep tabs of how many times the kid does a certain behavior. And then if they're under that number, you can then reinforce them for that. So it works well when you're working with a lot of kids and like you just need to have keep tabs on the one kid. And so I would just be wondering if he thinks that that is the most efficient differential reinforcement schedule compared to like differentially reinforcing alternative behaviors or DRA or yeah, any other of the schedules. And then my last question for him would be that in regards to the cumulative reinforcement schedule, they gave a fixed social reinforcement schedule of reinforcing every time the subject got an answer right. I would be wondering that since in our class we have talked about the fact that a variable ratio reinforcement schedule has always been proven to show more consistent results of compliance than a fixed variable ratio, if they would have a plan to add that within or into their accumulated reinforcement schedule. So the study talked about how every time they got a question right, they would always praise the student for getting the question right and telling them that like, hey, you earned a little more time at the end of your work with your iPad. I would be wondering if like maybe reinforcing just the compliance throughout the time would cause possibly more compliance, more correct answers, and whatnot, just because of what we've looked at with success between variable ratio and fixed ratio reinforcement schedules. Why is his research important? I think DRL could be an effective method to lower the rates of frequent problem behaviors when implemented correctly. Through his studies, I would actually be an interesting thing to look at just because I don't feel like it's as common of a differential reinforcement schedule. Accumulative reinforcement could actually make teaching new skills more effective. In the study's case, they were teaching them how to spell certain words, both that they knew and were trying to maintain, and completely new words that they were trying to learn to spell that were actually much more difficult. And I think it showed that every single subject actually had a raise in their skill to do that. And then the last one, if the PECS research be shown to be uh, can be reproduced, then this could actually show that there may be a weakness for the PECS system for kids with communication deficits. Uh, Not to say that this would deter people from using a PEC system. It's just to then, if you know that a deficit like that could come from a system like that, you could at least have possible plans for when you would have to cross that barrier in the future when introducing a child to a PEC system. And here is my bibliography, and thank you.